This is something to hold us, where our mission is to bring people closer to their emotions to understand who they really are. This is going to be a little different episode this week. I felt like I needed to take an opportunity to give the listeners a little more background into myself and show them that vulnerability honestly can be a superpower. And I'm trying to learn to make that a principle of mine that I can stand on. And next week, I'm looking forward to have a guest that can see that through this episode. And I hope you listeners enjoy it as well. How we're going to start the show moving forward is something that I've gotten from my job that I've started to place like great importance on, because you often don't really check in with the people around you as often as you should. And a simple way to check in is something that we do at work. It's called a community meeting, where we ask somebody three simple questions. One, how are you feeling? Two, what is what is your goal for today? And three, who can you ask for help? So me answering those questions for myself, I would say I'm feeling wonderful, to especially because the space that I'm getting to record in today, it's a studio by that's owned by a gentleman named Bates and Foot, and it's called the World of Babylon. Before I get into what that means to me, let me follow through with the meeting. One goal I have for today is to successfully share the poem that I have with no hiccups that I've been practicing all week. One person I can ask for help is I have asked for help is my friend Jakai, who runs the Growth is Competitive podcast. And I've obviously recited a couple poems to him, and I really feel like I'm in a space where I want to continue to share something that's so dear to me with people. But not to go off track, not to get off track, like I said, I'm in a very special place to me today. It's called the World of Babylon. It's a studio, and it's in Bridgeport at the Bridgeport Innovation Center, I believe, where I came to an event one day, invited by a friend named Brendan, who's going to be on the podcast next week, who I view as a sensei when it comes to writing and poetry. And it's something that I've always done, but been too uncomfortable to share with the world. And coming that day, I actually felt so welcomed and appreciated by the people there. I wouldn't say appreciated because they didn't hear me at first, but like I would say understood whatever without having to explain myself, because I was surrounded by people that were still going on their journey themselves. And it made me feel very comfortable to share my story. And my story where I was being a week out of the hospital was I can't really put it into words, but I really took it as a new lease on life, and I shared them with them that day. And that was the first time I ever got on stage to be on an open mic and share my poems or tell people what I went through. And the group of people that were there that day just received me with open arms. And after I performed, they came up to me with many words of praise, love, support, and these are people I've never met in my life. That's what made me feel so comfortable to share my story. But then it made me realize how much more I needed to get out. Like how what's the word I'm looking for? How important it was for me to finally be myself in any space, not just in spaces that people didn't know me. Because if people didn't know me could accept me, then the people that have known me for many years should accept me. And should is a strong word, because you shouldn't have any expectations on somebody else. But if you're somebody that's part of my community, they have accepted me, and I've proved that through being here doing this podcast for the second week. This week's episode is going to be a little different. Like I said, instead of the scheme that I've had before of asking somebody about their challenges or the pivotal life experiences, because like I said, this podcast is about connecting with our emotions through our life experiences and daily conversations. And I feel honestly through that we can find the answers that we're looking for internally. So what I did this week was ask three people to send questions that they would like me to answer, and I think I got some pretty good questions here. Let me start off with my sister Monica. She asked me, "What was your biggest accomplishment?" Um, I've had a lot of great accomplishments, I feel, in my life, but my biggest was that I've in regards of me was maybe having a garden and putting the time and care into turning over the land, shaping it, creating the border, watering, fertilizing, and watching everything just really grow. You don't really realize how powerful it is to grow your own vegetables and realize that if push came to shove, you could rely on yourself and feed a family realistically. Because I grew so much food that I started giving things away, from squash to watermelons to from all different types of peppers, tomatoes, of course. And it was just a very enjoyable and an enlightening experience, especially how therapeutic it was. And I've never had a garden before, but I've learned to really love that aspect of my life. And that was a really great accomplishment for me. Another question she had for me is, why did I pick the career I have? For those that haven't listened to the other podcasts, I'm a family advocate for a nonprofit, which means I work with youth and I try to get them to graduate on time and get them connected to some post-secondary program, whether they decide to go to college or whether they decide to go learn a trade. Because we often believe that life can be you can be a success in many different ways, and a 4 year degree doesn't really have to define who you are as a person. Nor does honestly go into college in general. You don't really need that if you have a plan for yourself. And I try to really instill that belief in kids, and hopefully they can dream however they want to dream. So I think the biggest thing that forced me into not forced me that made me choose this career is being a kid with a lack of guidance and trying to make all those decisions myself. I always thought about what could I have done if I was younger and had somebody in my position to really guide me. And not to say that I didn't accomplish anything that I really want to accomplish, because I still very much feel like a success. But it's a space that where in my community a lot of people have struggled, and I know it's very lacking. So I try to step into that. One person once said, if you try to be a hero, you can see what kind of values you really live up to. Um, Third question she asks, where do you see yourself in the next year? That's a tough question. I kind of see myself, I'm in such a great space that I'm hoping in the next year, I don't want to say I'm still in the same space, like I haven't evolved, but I really hope to still be this happy, still be this motivated and passionate about the things that I find worthy of my time now. And I hope to grow deeper bonds with the people that I've been meeting recently, because for a long time I've put a lot of pride in having friendships that lasted 20, 30 years. And not to say those friendships don't mean anything, but I'm really learning to accept the idea that it doesn't matter how long you've known somebody, it's more so about the quality of the time you have together. And I've met a lot of interesting people that instilled me with more inspiration and reignited a fire in me that like all your dreams are possible. And it doesn't matter how much time you spent focused on something else and feeling like, yeah, I'm not a success because I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish by a certain age. Because all you need to do is rewire that dream and get back to work, and you can still achieve that. But you got to be around the right people that make you believe that. Um, let's switch it up a little bit. Jakai asked me a question. He asked me, how do you get your feeling of importance? If you would have asked me that question 2 months ago, I would have told you seeing people succeed. And now I realized I don't think that is a good answer, because I put the value of myself into other people's hands. Because if they don't succeed, do I feel less of an important person? And I can't say I do feel like that anymore. I'm more so in a space where if I accomplish my to-do list, if I write a couple goals down, let's say I write down 10 things I want to do tomorrow, and I'm able to accomplish even 5 of them, maybe even two, but I accomplished those things very well up to par of my standards. That makes me feel important. And then taking back that control of value and putting it, instilling it in myself is something that I'm working on. And every day I try to write a to do list. And when I do accomplish even one thing, I feel important. I feel like I mattered to myself because I took the time to really execute. And I don't have to execute perfectly. Like I don't have to get a 10 out of 10 on my to-do list to feel important. But if I truly believe I'm important, I'd accomplish at least one of the things that I told myself that I valued. And if I valued it, I put it on my to-do list. I hope that's a good enough answer. Um, and I've talked about writing and getting into poetry and being able to share my own poems. What used to make me really nervous about that is when I used to write poems, it used to be my release. It was very therapeutic. So sharing a poem with the public meant how would I put it? Meant showing them who I really was. The pain, the happiness, the sorrow, the frustration, the sadness, like showing all that, and that was I would bear myself bare to criticism, and criticism is something that I wasn't really ready to accept. I used to be a very people centered person where the opinions of others affected me, and getting to a space now where I know as long as whatever I think about myself is what matters the most. If I can't be positive about what I went through or accept what I went through, I can't expect anybody else to accept what I went through. And learning to accept who I am supersedes anything at this point. But I say that to say, as a poet or as a writer, which I would like to believe I am, Brendan asked me a question. Said, "What do you want to accomplish as a poet, writer, and creative?" I definitely want to write a book, but at its root, the common theme of my poems has been to truly find acceptance of oneself and really learn to love yourself or express yourself in any way possible. And right now, I could say I just write poems or poetic bites, as a friend of mine would say. And that's all true. Like the length is irrelevant to me because I can say something in 3 lines that is just as powerful as something that is in 20 bars. And both of those things can inspire somebody equally. So I'm hoping that I can really paint pictures that make people feel and see that how they feel is they're not alone, and that it's okay to feel how you feel because they're just emotions and you don't have to feel like that forever. But if you keep that in that for you inside, if you keep that inside of you forever, you'll definitely explode at some point, and I'm telling you from experience. And to speak on vulnerability, I will ask myself a couple questions that fit the theme of the show. When was the last time I cried? That's a heavy question right now because the last time I did cry, I was actually in the hospital, and I don't like to. I don't want to make this a thing where I talk about being in the hospital all the time, but that was the last time I cried, where I was in there for a week, and the psychiatrist told me that she was ready for me to go home, and I felt ready to go home. But considering my actions, you have to be, you have to get the okay from somebody that you live with to go home. And my partner at the time, rightfully so, was scared, and she was unsure of what to do, knowing that she wasn't going to be home with me all the time. And she was in the hospital with me, and Kai was as well, and we talked, and she agreed that I should go. But then when she left the room and I'm getting myself ready to go home, she called the psychiatrist and told her to that she wasn't ready for me to leave. So I actually had to stay for another week, and I just felt so betrayed and um broken at that moment because of everything that I was going through with her was so came so much from a lack of communication. And for somebody that wasn't really communicating with me, at least their truth at the time, I can't say that. That's disrespectful. They communicated me their truth, but they weren't communicating with me consistently. I guess because they felt bad about how they felt, because they knew how they felt impacted how I felt. Nonetheless, though, she made a decision on my own freedom, and it hurt because despite how I felt, there was nothing I could say. And I don't think most people haven't felt this way where you can feel okay, but because of what you did, you've lost the trust of not only your family and friends, but you literally cannot leave that hospital if they say you can't leave, and you have to have somebody that sits with you the whole time. And I would say she doesn't know what that feels like. So putting me back into that situation, it hurt a lot, and I felt abandoned because of what we were going through and the fate and the transition that we were working on. Regardless, for her to do that hurt beyond anything I felt recently. But after a while, I would say maybe 2 days after being in deep thought, I could understand where she was coming from, and in hindsight, it was the exact right thing to do because I don't believe I was ready, and I've learned a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people after being there for an extra week that really put me in the headspace to express myself and be okay with who I was, realizing that other people that have just as successful as you, if not more, are going through the very similar things. And I met a guy named, let's call him M, that went through the exact same thing. Like actually, when we were down there together, he was supposed to go home, and he was like, "Yeah, my wife said I should be here for a couple more days for the weekend." And I'm like, "Damn, how do you feel about that?" And he was like, "It's all right. Maybe I need to spend that time." And it really resonated with me because like he's somebody that has kids out there waiting for him, and he's like, you know what? Maybe I do need to get better, not just for myself, but for the people that love me and gain their trust in the right way. All right, so you don't have to be as deep. The next question is, who or what in your life makes you smile? I feel like I talk about the same people very often, so let me try to switch this up. The kids I work with make me smile because you never know what they're gonna say, do, and feel, but the you remember, I don't know if you remember being a kid and feeling like being 17, 14, 18, and feeling like you knew all the answers and nobody couldn't really tell you shit. And they're just like that. And it makes me laugh because I reminisce about myself being like that, and I'd give them the space to be who they really are and try to only step in when I have to. And I realized like when you give somebody the space to be who they are and step in like that, only when you have to, they can truly blossom into the person that they really want to be. They just need that type of guidance where you like push them and keep them back on track. But I think people truly know who they want to be. And when you talk to them and let them experiment with life in that way, you let them figure out who they really are. And that in itself makes me smile every time. Like I have a kid that texted me last week saying she wants to set goals for herself. And this is a kid that skipped school every day last year. And she wants to set goals for herself. And she wants me to help her with that. And mind you, she didn't come to school the next day, but she just having that conversation with her made me realize, all right, I'm letting her take her time and develop as she wants to at the pace that she wants to, even though I do sometimes feel like there's a sense of urgency I need to give them. But when life clicks for them, it doesn't have to click perfectly. That shit just really makes me smile. Or even like recently, I have a kid that I want to say the same kid tell me that we had a conversation about therapy, and I can feel like I can have a much more honest conversation with people about that because having been in therapy now and understanding the usefulness of it. When I was a kid, I wasn't here to hear anybody out really. I really felt like I had all the answers. And she reached out and she's like, you know what? I think I want to try that. And that opened me up to so much. Like just to see that development. Um, Let me ask another question from Monica. It said, are you giving your best where you have your best to give? It's something I'm still working on. I have to define what my best is and where I do want to give that, because like there's sacrifices that I need to learn to make within myself that will shape me better as a person and allow me to have the energy to exert myself in the way that I need to. Because so often I would say yes to a lot of things and half ass a lot of it. But learning to say no and focusing my energy with the right people and activities has put me in a space where I'm definitely trying to give the best that I have. And over time, it's only going to get better. Just like being in this podcast. I mean, I don't think this space is necessarily comes natural to me, but I feel like as I go, I find a comfortability in it and where I can be sure of myself. And I'm hoping to show you guys that at the end when I talk about this poem. And the last question I ask myself is, what does self-care mean to you? Self-care to me is resetting, taking a step away from the things you have to do the things you want to do. And the things that I want to do is another thing that I'm learning to really understand. Right now it's reading. I want to say exercising, but I haven't really got into that space yet. But it's definitely a focus of mine that I know I want to do more of. And I guess I got to learn a lot of different activities. Learn more activities to relax. One of them is getting my nails done. And I realized they do give me a discount because of missing my middle finger. So shout out to them. And but as the weeks go on, I definitely add on to the different things that bring me peace and allow me to reset. I'll figure out the things that I really want to do that bring me the peace that I'm looking for. All right, I don't have the 5 words for feel this way because I couldn't ask myself 5 questions, but I will talk about the new emotion that I did learn about, and the emotion is called nachis, and I believe it's a Jewish word, and it means overwhelming delight for someone else's success. And I felt that often recently. Like I gave you example with my students, but not just with my students, with the close friends that I have in my community, seeing their successes from watching Jakai edit his podcast and the people that he reaches with it and motivates. Just that makes me so happy to see people really in their element. To watching Naria paint and do graphic design or get a graphic design certificate, that's something that made me really happy to see as well. And there's something similar, somebody that's just similar to me, Kelly, Jakai's wife, where you can see her happiness when she makes other people happy. And that might be a little layered of like living vicariously through somebody, but that brings me peace as well. And I'm just happy to see my people happy and successful in the ways that they define their own success. Even if you don't have to agree with it, but just to see them in their element really overwhelms me with delight. And now to the part that I've been looking forward to is this poem that I have. I feel like getting open, sharing more and more of it is something that's been freeing to me. I'm trying to recite this from memory. That was my goal from last week. So give me a second. Listen, if I mess up, I'm gonna run that shit back. So listen. Our views became distorted by retina displays and fingerprint security. We started simulating the majority of life experiences. Why are we in such a hurry? To keep up with cubic zirconians that sparkle under the light, but always fail the diamond test. And in the darkness, barely love themselves. Only if we had the same urgency when dealing with mental health. We wouldn't have mothers that heal by overloving the spitting image of a man from who she could never protect herself, or daughters that think the essence of a man is his absence, doing mental gymnastics to prove to herself this is love because it's a feeling she has no recollection of having. Life, life is a house of mirrors that's so often tragic. You can have a false perspective of everybody else while competing with different versions of yourself. And this is something that holds us.